Hello all, welcome back to another Enterprise review. Today, Vance Major and Captain Trek join me for the conclusion of Shockwave Part 2. And I thought it was fitting to have Cap on at the end of the season since he was here to make me watch this thing. And, so we had to have Cap. Couldn't do the final without Cap. So how are you doing, Cap?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good. Vance?
And you, Vince?
Oh, I'm so happy. I think I peed myself.
Oh, boy. So I'm going to go around the table. We'll do the initial thoughts on the episode, and we'll go from there. So, Vance, go ahead.
Well, nothing happened in this episode. Archer goes to the future, and they spend the whole episode with him just coming back, and literally nothing happened. So, yeah. Oh, wait, no, I'll take that back. Reed stuck his arm in a hole, and Hoshi lost her top. That was fun. That was fun. I paused during that part. That was it. I mean, that was great.
Yeah, so, sums it up.
That's it. That's it.
That's about my thinking as well. It just doesn't
make sense. Oh, and we heard Romulan.
Oh, yes, they did mention Romulans. Yes. Oh, maybe that's something you shouldn't read. Yeah. Oy.
So despite all of that, we are still better than Lower Decks.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But, okay, so my thoughts on this was Star Trek as a general rule have very, there are a few exceptions, but as a general rule, their two-parters generally don't land well. No. Usually, the first part builds up major expectation that the part two just never cashes. It writes a check. Part one usually writes a check that part two can't cash. And in a sense, this was the same. I mean, it's not the worst payoff ever, but it does kind of end lackluster. I mean, okay, they're stuck in the future. There's no power. There's no nothing. Oh, how are we going to get back? Oh, wait. Do you have a tricorder and a scanner? Yeah. Oh, well then, why didn't you say so? Easy peasy. We can get this done. Don't worry about it. Oh, grab me some copper while you're at it. Yeah, that's a little too easy for me.
That's exactly it. Like part one, it's like this great giant explosion, and part two, it's like this little crappy shockwave. See what I did there?
Yeah.
I did this.
Shut up, Wesley.
Good one, Cap. And that's why we need Cap on these. Oh my goodness. But no, to me it just seems so lackluster. And then all the problems that were brought up in the first part were solved with barely an inconvenience. It's just like,
but here's the thing.
You're stuck in the future, no problem. What the fuck?
They weren't even solved. He was like, scrape this metal thing off and make sure it's a millimeter long. Scrape metal shavings off of this. Like, what? Like, how did? But you did all this thing in high school. Yep, we sure did. What? Like, nothing makes any sense. Like,
bubblegum, duct tape, and baling wire.
Yeah, bubblegum, duct tape, and baling wire. Like, what the fuck does that even have to do with anything? Like, none of it makes sense. Like, you can tell.
MacGyver.
Even MacGyver would be going, damn. Right? At that point. And not only that, but I mean, okay, so he gets back. Enterprise fakes a warp core breach. Okay, that was interesting. That was a good plot device. But to be honest, I think where it would have been better and it would have made for a lot more suspense would have been as they're warping away and the Suliban ships are chasing. I think it would have been better if the Vulcan ship would have met up, and it's the Vulcan ship that shows up and goes, hey, no blowing up our toy. What are you doing? Screw off, right? And then where is Archer? Well, I don't know. I can't tell you, sir. And they're about to, drag Enterprise back to Earth on a garbage scow, and then Archer shows up.
The Vulcan show up and be like, "What the fuck is going
But
here's what I want to see. First off, when Archer comes back and changes the timeline back to whatever, Daniel's got erased in that fucking future. I want to see him get eradicated. Like, dude, wiped out. Like Flashpoint, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, just wipe the fuck out. Like, just poof. There you go, motherfucker. You're gone. You and your flashy black suit you got going on there.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. Like, all this techno-babble bullshit they got going on that don't make a lick of sense. Screw that. Show me Daniel's dying. Like, none of this made any sense. It was a great episode, though. I mean, you had the wacky kinetic sand-looking Suliban people that I hate. You had the wacky ships they got going on there that look like rejected Borg, connected cube thingy-mabobs. Like, this whole episode was just bland. It had a great setup.
It's anticlimactic. You have a great setup and a shitty finish, which is what normally happens in a Star Trek two-parter.
And even then you had Trip at the end talking to the Vulcans going, "You're pathetic." Like, no bridge officer would do that. No commander would do that. Like, that right there, just like, you had me up until that line. Like, having him stick up and say, "Look, you guys don't want us out here. You guys, we proved we didn't do that." Like, that felt in character, but then saying, "You're pathetic." Like, that was just a little too far. Like, then you had the Vulcans acting like Scooby-Doo villains, like, rushing out of the room on screen. Like, come on, man. Like, just have them, after T'Pol gives her speech, just have them stand there and contemplate. You can have them still be the bad guys while still retaining their Vulcanness. And that's what this whole series so far just feels off. And I know they eventually will fix that. Not to spoil it for you, Ramblin', but like, they fixed that. But as of right now, as you're watching it the first time through, they don't feel like Vulcans. They feel like Scooby-Doo villains as they rush off and they act all mad and angry. And it's just like, fuck off with that, man.
Well, like I said since the beginning, and Cap can attest to this, to me, the Vulcans in season 1 are not Vulcans. They're freaking Romulans.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to TNG Romulans, that's how they act.
Yeah.
The whole first season of Enterprise, the Vulcans are basically TNG Romulans. That's basically it. They've switched the Vulcans to Romulans and been done with it. I don't know how else to put it. But to me, that's how they come across. They come across as TNG Romulans. And it's like, wrong species, morons. But I just, to me, it's so anticlimactic. And I hate when that happens. And it happened even in TNG. It happened in Voyager. It happened in DS9 sometimes. It happens a lot in Trek when there's a two-parter. I mean, there are some that were done well, but very few. Where they, and back in the day, you used to have like some of these two-parters, like the one travesty in TNG, where it was part 1 was the end of the season, part 2 was the beginning of the season. So you had to wait like 6 months or whatever it was to see that conclusion, and it sucked.
Well, I think you and I talked last week. I don't know if it made it to the show or if this was after the show. But like I said, like, you go to Chain of Command part 1 and 2, which was an episode that was written in the middle of the season, and that part 1 and 2, which clearly was written with part 2 in mind, and it was great. And that's the problem, is a lot of the times with the season ending part 1 and the season opening part 2, they don't have any idea where they're going to start when they do part 2. So that's part of the problem of this, is they write themselves such a great ending and they paint themselves into such a corner, and then they have no idea. Whereas like with Chain of Command, they know, like, hey, we've got next week to get this done, and let's just, we know exactly where we're going to end this. So that's part of the problem with this one, where it was just so anticlimactic. Whereas at the end of last week, you felt that like gut punch of like, oh my God, he's in the future. What is going on? And this is crazy. And then with this, like literally nothing happened. Everything was, oh, this isn't here, this isn't there, this isn't here, this isn't right. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those things were cool. Listening to Archer talk about the Federation, the monuments, the books in the library, like that stuff was cool. But him getting back, none of that made any sense. None of that, they just didn't spend enough time with any of the stuff where nothing had any gravity to it. And then before you know it, he's back. So to me, yeah. I would have rather them spend some time in that future for maybe an episode or two where he's sitting there and he feels the gravity of that situation. Maybe that's part of the reason why I'm kind of excited for Discovery Season 3, is because they're actually going to a dystopian future where nothing's familiar. And you kind of get to see the, like, oh, wow, what is going on? This is truly the unknown, because you don't get a sense of any of that in this episode, where you left last episode and you were like, wow, sky's the limit. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'll stop rambling. You guys take it.
Yeah. So what about you, Cap? What are you thinking?
No, I watched part 1 last week. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be with you all, but I did watch it. And there was a huge buildup, and it was just, you're smelling the steak, and then all of a sudden you get a hamburger.
Yeah, exactly. You're expecting like T-bone steak and potatoes, and then they bring you your meal, and it's like hamburger steak with French fries. Mm-hmm. What the fuck? I thought I ordered the steak. You got the wrong table. This is not what I ordered. And it's just such a letdown in a way. Because, you're looking at this and you're going, okay, they built it up good. There were a lot of good premises here. But, there's a lot of moving parts. I just, like I said, if it would have been the Vulcan ship would have been the one to scare off the Solobon. That would have been cool. And, Archer not exactly be able to get out of he gets back fine, but, Enterprise is gone. And now he's stuck on this damn thing, and it's the Vulcans that have to pull him out of it or something, anything. Not just, I kidnapped the most powerful guy, so, yeah, we're good.
Yeah, everything was wrapped up a little bit too conveniently.
Nobody shoots him from behind? How'd he get out of that fucking station alive?
Well, I think it would have been funny is if, as they're, as he's flying towards the Enterprise, if the Enterprise would have been like, man, fire at that one that's coming toward us, and then they accidentally kill Archer, and that's why that future in the in the very far future is that way, is because the Enterprise accidentally kills Archer.
Oops.
Had nothing to do with him being taken into the future. It had to do with Enterprise accidentally killing Archer,
Yeah, accidentally blowing him up, yeah. But it's just to me, it was just too convenient, right? He gets off their home base just by taking the leader hostage. Okay.
Yeah.
And this works because reasons?
Yeah, this definitely should have been a two-parter. With everything that happened, they should have at least had another episode in there to explain some stuff.
Well, and that's the thing. They have in this episode. They actually started doing 3-part episodes, or at least 3-part. You know, if it wasn't like part 1, part 2, part 3, it was you could at least see like, hey, this is a 3-part mini arc in the season. And I like the fact that they actually started doing those. And I think this should have been given, at least the gravity of the situation that was in this episode. This should have been given another episode to feel what was going on. Because, like I said, spending that time in the future would have been great. Spending time with the crew, you know, getting, you know, trying to take the ship back like that. Those are heavy circumstances. And that's part of the problem with the Suliban is you don't really get a sense of a threat from these people. They're just, they're the threat of the week. And they're kind of like the Ferengi in Next Gen at the beginning. They're not really a threat, but we're told they are, but we don't really see that they are. And when you're
the bad guys of Voyager.
Yeah, the Kazon. Yeah,
the Kazon.
Yeah, and that, you know, when you are shown, you know, like when Trip shoves the one, you know, he's like, "Hey, watch it!" And the other guy points a gun at him. It's like that's about the extent of all the threats. It's just like it's just weak sauce, man. Whereas like I remember that, you know, show me the Jem'Hadar and the Defiant in DS9. They felt imposing, and they never had to lift a finger. And all the guns on the Suliban, I never feel threatened once.
Mm-mm.
So you know, it's just there's a lot of things that the series still hasn't got right yet. And pacing, I think, is a big problem for the series so far. Thankfully, it gets fixed, but we haven't got to that point yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go around, give our final grades, and wrap this sucker up. So, Vance, final grade.
If I'm being honest, I'd have to say probably about a 4.
Okay.
It's got a lot of good ideas. We just don't spend enough time with each character to give a shit. And I desperately want to, especially after we left off last season. You know, and last season I felt like we had some gems, but we just didn't spend enough time with any of those characters. So I'm asking myself, why do I care? And there just wasn't enough here. But the ideas that they presented, I felt were strong. They just didn't execute them well. So I'd say a 4.
All right. And Cap?
I agree, a 4.
All right. I'm going to go with a 5. And that's saying something because last episode I gave an 8. It was the first time that Vance Major and I agreed on a grade for an episode. And I was severely let down. It just was meh. So it's a 5. And 5 is my meh grade. It always is. 5 is meh. And it was just meh. Everything was fixed, you know, quicker than a hiccup, and you know, nothing to see here. We're good. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was almost. It was almost as if they did nothing. It would have solved itself anyway, and that's never how you want to leave a part 2 of your season, you know, or of your opening. You know, that's never a good sign.
Never a good sign. All right. So
thank you again for letting me join you.
Oh, absolutely, Cap. You're always welcome. You know that. And I want to thank everyone for listening to us ramble here for a little bit. I want to thank you for listening to the Enterprise Reviews. Vance, Cap, thanks for coming. And
absolutely.
Please like, share, subscribe, comment often. And until next time, take her easy.